The morning sky over Manhattan turned black first. Initial reports labeled it as an unprecedented solar eclipse, but Jennifer Torres, lead astronomer at the Hayden Planetarium, knew better. Her coffee cup slipped from trembling fingers as she stared at the real-time satellite feed. "That's no shadow," she whispered to her empty office. "That's a ship." The Raxian Consortium's dreadnought Star Render had materialized without warning, its obsidian hull stretching 23 miles from bow to stern. The vessel's surface rippled like liquid metal, absorbing both light and radar signals. Within minutes, similar reports flooded in from Beijing, Moscow, and London. Smaller ships, still massive by human standards, taking position above every major city on Earth. At 9:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, every electronic device on the planet activated simultaneously. Phones, computers, radio, television, all broadcast the same message in perfect, unaccented English. "Greetings, inhabitants of Sol 3. We are the Raxian Consortium. Your world has been assessed and deemed suitable for integration into our protection network. Compliance is mandatory. Resistance is unwise." The New York Stock Exchange halted trading within seconds as global markets went into free fall. President Sandra Mitchell was evacuated from the White House to an unknown location, though her press secretary would later claim she refused to leave Washington. In China, the military mobilized with unprecedented speed, while the European Union convened an emergency session that would last well into the night. Above Times Square, a holographic image materialized. A towering figure, vaguely humanoid but wrong in subtle ways. Its skin had the same liquid metal sheen as the ship's, and its eyes held the cold light of ancient stars. "Your species has achieved sufficient technological development to be of use," the figure announced, its voice resonating at a frequency that made windows vibrate and dogs howl. "The terms are simple. 30% of your world's total resources delivered annually. In exchange, you receive our protection and limited access to our trade networks." In the streets below, a mix of panic and fascination gripped the crowds. Smartphones recorded everything. Social media exploded with theories and reactions, and the NYPD struggled to maintain order as both religious zealots and alien enthusiasts flooded the streets. At the United Nations, Security Council members watched in horror as the holographic figure continued. "You have 72 standard hours to begin resource transfer preparations, to demonstrate our resolve." A beam of light, so bright it turned night to day over the Pacific, lanced down from the Star Render. The uninhabited Phoenix Islands disappeared in a flash of energy that vaporized everything to a depth of 10 miles. When the light faded, only a perfect hemisphere of glass remained where the island chain had been. "This was a minimal power demonstration," the figure stated. "Your nuclear arsenals would be insufficient to inconvenience us. We await your compliance." The transmission ended, but the ships remained, their presence an unspoken threat hanging over every major population center on Earth. Military satellites went dark one by one, their systems frozen by some unknown technology. Fighter jets that approached too close to the alien vessels found their systems shutting down, forced to glide back to base on backup power. In the Oval Office bunker, President Mitchell met with her Joint Chiefs. "Options," she demanded. General Marcus Wade, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, looked decades older than he had that morning. "Madam President, our most advanced weapons can't even penetrate their sensor range. We're looking at a technological gap similar to modern military forces versus Stone Age tribes." "We don't submit," Mitchell stated flatly. "Find me a way to fight back." As night fell over a changed Earth, humanity grappled with its new reality. Prayer services filled churches, mosques, and temples. Doomsday preppers emerged from their bunkers to declare vindication, and in laboratories and military installations around the world, desperate minds searched for any weakness in an enemy that seemed invincible. 71 hours remained until the deadline. Humanity's clock was ticking. Dr. Amanda Stone hadn't left the DRPA Quantum Communications Lab in 36 hours. Empty coffee cups and half-eaten pizza slices surrounded her workstation like archaeological evidence of a scientist on the edge of either breakdown or breakthrough. Her eyes burned as she stared at the quantum signature analysis of the Raxian transmissions, something nagging at the edge of her consciousness. "You need sleep," Dr. James Rodriguez, her research partner, said from the doorway. "We all do." "Look at this pattern," she said, ignoring him. "It's wrong. All wrong." The quantum oscillation patterns from the alien transmissions danced across her holographic display. Most of her colleagues had dismissed the subtle irregularities as background noise or equipment malfunction. But Amanda had spent the last 5 years studying quantum entanglement communications, and something about these signatures felt familiar. "Remember Project Mockingbird?" she asked, pulling up another display. "The quantum shield experiments we abandoned last year." James stepped closer, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "The ones that kept collapsing because we couldn't maintain stable quantum states." "Exactly." Amanda's fingers flew over the keyboard. "Look at the decay pattern when our shields failed. Now look at these spikes in the Raxian transmissions." James's eyes widened. "They're almost identical." "Not almost," Amanda said, her voice trembling with either fatigue or excitement. "They are identical. The Raxians are using quantum mechanics for their shields, but they're making the same mistake we did. They're just better at compensating for it." A heavy hand landed on her shoulder, making her jump. Colonel William Hayes, their military liaison, had entered the lab silently. "Explain it to me like I'm 5, Doctor." Amanda took a deep breath. "Their shields are like a soap bubble, Colonel. Incredibly strong when hit directly, but if you find the right frequency." She tapped a key, showing a simulation. "The whole thing could pop." "Could you do it?" Hayes asked, his voice deadly serious. "Maybe, but we'd need to get close. Really close. And they're watching everything we do. The moment they detect us building any kind of weapon." "Which is why we don't build a weapon," James interrupted, an idea forming. "We build a tribute." The next 4 hours were a blur of calculations and quantum simulations. When Amanda finally emerged from her mathematical trance, she found the lab had filled with military personnel and government officials. On her main screen, a secure connection showed President Mitchell herself, looking grim but determined. "Dr. Stone," the president said, "I'm told you found something." Amanda straightened in her chair, suddenly very aware of her disheveled appearance. "Madam President, the Raxians have a vulnerability. Their entire defense system relies on quantum shields that suffer from instability issues. We could design a device to exploit that weakness. But what, Doctor?" "But we'd need thousands of them, and we'd need to get them all within a few hundred meters of their ships simultaneously. 1 or 2 devices wouldn't be enough. The shields would adapt too quickly." Colonel Hayes stepped forward. "Which is why we're going to give them exactly what they asked for, a massive resource transfer. Only our ships will be carrying something extra." The president's eyes narrowed. "How sure are you about this, Dr. Stone?" Amanda thought about all the lives hanging in the balance, about the demonstration of power over the Phoenix Islands, about the arrogance in the alien ambassador's voice. "Sure enough to bet my life on it, Madam President. And that's exactly what anyone who pilots those ships will be doing." President Mitchell was silent for a long moment. "You have 24 hours to prove your theory. After that, we'll either have a fighting chance, or we'll be forced to submit. The clock's ticking, Dr. Stone." As the video feed cut off, Amanda turned back to her calculations. She had 24 hours to perfect a theory that could save humanity, or watch Earth become just another conquered world in the Raxian collection. The weight of billions of lives pressed down on her shoulders, but for the first time since the aliens arrived, she felt something new. The Cheyenne Mountain bunker hadn't seen this much activity since the Cold War. 3 levels below the main operations center, in a hastily converted storage room, Dr. Amanda Stone watched as volunteers lined up for what could be a suicide mission. Each device needs to be calibrated to its pilot, she explained to the latest group, her voice hoarse from repeating the instructions. The quantum resonance has to match your biosignatures, or the Raxians might detect the anomaly. Colonel Hayes stood at her side, reviewing the latest intelligence reports. Russian and Chinese fleets are in position. European Union forces report ready, just waiting on the South Pacific Squadron. The plan, now dubbed Operation Silkworm, was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its audacity. 5,000 civilian transport ships would launch simultaneously from every major spaceport on Earth, each supposedly carrying the first installment of the Raxians' demanded tribute. The ships' hulls were lined with rare earth minerals, exactly what the aliens had requested. But hidden within each cargo hold, disguised as environmental control units, sat Dr. Stone's quantum resonance devices. Each one individually would be harmless, barely a blip on the Raxians' sensors. Together, they would create a cascading quantum disruption that could shatter the aliens' supposedly impenetrable shields. Final system check, James called out from his station. Quantum signature masking is holding steady at 98%. Amanda moved between the rows of volunteers, each being fitted with their neural interface bands. Most were civilian pilots, cargo haulers, transport captains, even a few retired shuttle commanders. All had volunteered despite knowing the risks. Remember, she told a young woman who couldn't have been more than 25, the neural link is crucial. When the signal comes, you have to trigger the device within nanoseconds of the others. The interface will help, but it's still going to take everything you've got. The pilot nodded, her eyes steel. My family's in Melbourne, right under one of their ships. I won't miss the signal. President Mitchell's voice crackled over the intercom. Dr. Stone, status report. Amanda moved to the command console. Final preparations are almost complete, Madam President. First launch wave is ready. We're just waiting on. South Pacific Squadron reports ready. Hayes interrupted, holding up his tablet. All forces are now in position. A tense silence filled the room. They had reached the point of no return. Either they launched now, while the Raxians still believed Earth was preparing to submit, or they lost their only chance at surprise. Very well. The President's voice was firm. Operation Silkworm is go. May God have mercy on our souls. The next hour was controlled chaos. Transport ships began lifting off from every continent, their launches staggered to maintain the illusion of a normal resource transfer. The Raxian vessels maintained their positions, their sensors detecting nothing but cargo ships laden with the tribute they had demanded. In the command center, Amanda watched the global launch map, her heart pounding. Each green dot represented a ship carrying one of her devices, a pilot willing to die for a chance at freedom, and a piece of the most ambitious military deception in human history. First wave approaching minimum safe distance, Hayes announced. Second wave now launching. No response from Raxian forces. Amanda's hands gripped the edge of her console. The quantum signatures were holding, the masking technology working better than she had dared to hope. But the hard part was still to come. Message from the Star Render. A communications officer called out. They're congratulating us on our wise choice to submit. A grim smile crossed Hayes's face. If they only knew. As the first transport ships approached their designated positions around the massive alien vessels, Amanda sent up a silent prayer. Not for success. It was far too late for that. Instead, she prayed that when the history of this day was written, people would remember that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't the technology she had created. It was the courage of 5,000 volunteers flying into the heart of death itself, armed with nothing but hope and the determination to remain free. Quantum signatures still masked, James reported, his voice tight with tension. All transport ships in final approach positions. Dr. Amanda Stone stood in Cheyenne Mountain's command center, watching as 5,000 green dots surrounded the massive red markers representing the Raxian vessels. Each dot was a life she had placed in harm's way, each one carrying a piece of her theory that could either save Earth or doom it. Multiple hails from the star render, communications reported. They're demanding to know why the transports have stopped short of their docking bays. Colonel Hayes keyed his microphone. All ships, hold position, quantum device status. The responses flooded in, each pilot reporting ready. The neural interfaces they wore would allow them to trigger their devices within nanoseconds of each other, assuming Amanda's calculations were correct. Raxian energy signatures spiking, a sensor officer called out. They're powering up their weapons. Now or never, Hayes said, looking at Amanda. She took a deep breath, remembering the young pilot with family in Melbourne, the thousands of others who had trusted her math, her science. Execute Operation Silkworm. The command went out. Through neural links and quantum circuits, 5,000 devices activated simultaneously. For a brief, terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then the sky changed. The Raxian shields, usually invisible to the naked eye, suddenly blazed with rainbow-colored patterns of quantum disruption. The massive star render, pride of the Raxian fleet, shuddered as its defense systems tried to compensate. Energy fluctuations detected in all Raxian vessels. The sensor officer's voice rose with excitement. Shield strength dropping. Amanda's fingers flew over her console, analyzing the data. The cascade is working. Their quantum fields are collapsing under their own resonance. That was the signal Earth had been waiting for. From hidden positions around the globe, military forces launched their real response. Russian submarines surfaced in the Atlantic, launching salvos of modified missiles. Chinese railgun platforms, concealed in the Gobi Desert, opened fire. American orbital platforms, plain dead since the invasion began, powered up their weapons. Message from the star render. Communication shouted. They're demanding to know how we managed to understand quantum shield technology. Hayes grinned. Send them our response. Humanity declines your offer of protection. The transport ships began breaking formation, their civilian pilots executing evasive maneuvers that would have made Top Gun instructors proud. Each device continued its work, the quantum disruption growing stronger as the Raxian shields tried and failed to adapt. Multiple detonations on Raxian vessels, the sensor officer reported. Their secondary systems are failing. They're actually vulnerable. But the Raxians weren't finished. The Star Render's weapon systems came online, targeting the nearest transport ships. Beams of energy lanced out, vaporizing several vessels before they could evade. No, Amanda whispered, watching green dots vanish from her display. Each one a life, a hero who had known the risks. Then something unexpected happened. The Raxian weapon fire began to disperse, breaking apart before it could reach its targets. Without their quantum shields to focus the energy, their much-vaunted superior technology was proving far less effective. All military forces report direct hits, Hayes announced. Raxian fleet taking heavy damage. They're actually trying to retreat. The command center erupted in cheers as the massive star render, its hull now scared and burning, attempted to power up its faster-than-light drive. But with its quantum systems in chaos, the mighty vessel could barely maintain its position in orbit. Message from President Mitchell. Communications called out. All forces cleared to engage. And Dr. Stone. She says, "Well done." Amanda finally allowed herself to breathe, even as tears rolled down her cheeks for the lives lost. Send word to all forces. Aim for their engine sections. Don't let a single ship escape. Today, humanity shows the galaxy that we will not be enslaved. Above, the sky burned with the light of battle, as Earth delivered its final answer to those who would demand tribute. A lesson in the danger of underestimating humanity's will to remain free. Colonel Jack Martinez had never seen anything like the Star Render's command center. The captured vessel's bridge stretched nearly a quarter-mile long, its walls lined with crystal displays that still flickered with alien text. Teams of Earth's best computer scientists and xenolinguists worked feverishly at the alien consoles, racing to decrypt the Raxian database before any remote wipe commands could reach the ship. "How much time do we have?" he asked Dr. Rebecca Chen, the lead cryptographer. She didn't look up from her holoscreen. Their quantum communication network is down thanks to Dr. Stone's device. But they'll find another way to reach the ship's systems eventually. We're racing against the clock. The battle had been won 6 hours ago. The Star Render, crippled by the combined assault of Earth's forces, now drifted in a stable orbit, its crew either captured or evacuated through emergency teleporters. Smaller Raxian vessels around the globe had met similar fates, their once invincible shields shattered by human ingenuity and determination. "Got something," a voice called out. Trevor Williams, a 22-year-old programming prodigy, at his hands deep in a holographic interface, found their navigation logs. "You're going to want to see this." The data that spilled across the main display made Martinez's blood run cold. Star charts showed thousands of worlds, each marked with different classifications: subjugated, resistant eliminated, resource depleted, and tribute compliant. "It's not just a protection racket," Rebecca breathed. "It's an empire built on extortion. Look at these resource transfer records." The numbers were staggering. Entire civilizations stripped of their resources, forced to mine their own worlds to exhaustion. Species after species, either broken into submission or wiped out for resistance. Another database decrypted, Trevor called out. "This one's different. Looks like internal communications." The messages that appeared revealed an even darker truth. The Raxians weren't just conquerors, they were bureaucrats of oppression. Each world was categorized and processed through a complex system of quotas and projections. They'd got it down to a science. Martin said, his voice heavy with disgust. "First contact protocols, demonstration of force, resource assessment. They've done this thousands of times." Rebecca pointed to a particular section of data. "Look at the response patterns they expected from us. They had Earth classified as standard resistance profile delta. They predicted we'd either submit immediately or launch an uncoordinated military response. They never expected us to unite," Trevor added, still digging through the files. "And they certainly never expected us to understand their technology well enough to counter it. We're the first species to ever break their quantum shields." A new alert flashed across the screens. Someone had found the Raxian communication logs with other subjugated worlds. The messages were still streaming in, carrying news of Earth's resistance across the stars. "They're watching us," Martins realized. "All those other worlds. They're seeing what we did here." As if to confirm his words, new data began flooding the system. Reports of uprisings on dozens of worlds, their enslaved populations inspired by Earth's example. The carefully constructed house of cards, that was the Raxian consortium, was beginning to collapse. "We need to get this information to Dr. Stone and the military command," Martins ordered, "and start working on a way to share our shield-breaking technology with these other worlds." Rebecca was already moving. "The quantum properties should be universal, if we can transmit the specifications." "Wait," Trevor interrupted, his face pale. "You need to see this first. I found their long-term strategic archives. The final piece of the puzzle appeared before them. The true purpose of the Hraxian tribute system. They weren't just taking resources. They were systematically draining entire sectors of space, funneling the wealth and energy of thousands of civilizations towards something hidden in the galactic core. "Get me a secure line to the President," Martins ordered, his voice grim. The battle we just won. It was only the beginning. Earth had broken free of its chains, but the real war, the war to liberate a galaxy, was just beginning. Dr. Amanda Stone hadn't slept in 3 days, but the messages kept coming. Every hour brought new transmissions from across the galaxy, each one from a different world breaking free from Hraxian control. The captured Star Render's communication array had become humanity's link to a revolution that was spreading like wildfire among the stars. "Another success report," James called out, his voice hoarse but excited. "The Centaurians just used our shield-breaking specs to take down 3 Hraxian cruisers." The vast command center, once filled with military personnel, now hosted an unlikely mix of Earth scientists and alien representatives who had risked everything to reach Earth. Holographic displays showed real-time updates from battles across hundreds of star systems. "The Hraxians are falling back in the Orion sector," a tall, silver-skinned being announced. Ambassador Corell of the Lyran Collective had arrived yesterday, having fought through 2 Hraxian blockades to reach Earth. "Their command structure is collapsing without their central network." Amanda moved to the strategic display, where Colonel Hayes was coordinating with Liberation forces across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. The map told an amazing story. Red dots of Hraxian control winking out, replaced by the green of freed worlds. "They never expected this," Hayes said, shaking his head. "Their whole empire was built on keeping worlds isolated, too afraid to help each other. Once we showed it was possible to fight back." "Incoming priority message," the communications officer interrupted. "It's from the Proxima colony. They're under heavy attack." The main screen lit up with combat footage. A dozen Hraxian dreadnoughts, larger than the Star Render, had surrounded the human colony world. Their weapons were charging, preparing to make an example of humanity's closest extrasolar settlement. "They're trying to break our spirit," Corell growled. "Show the galaxy that resistance still means death." But the Hraxians had miscalculated again. Even as their ships moved into firing position, multiple jump points opened around them. Ships of all sizes and designs emerged. A fleet made up of vessels from 20 different species, all using Earth's shield-breaking technology. "The Alliance responds," Ambassador Corell said with fierce pride. "Your world showed us that we are stronger together. Now we return the favor." The battle that followed was unlike anything in human history. Freed from fear of the Hraxians' impenetrable defenses, the Allied fleet struck with the fury of centuries of oppression. Their weapons, many more advanced than Earth's, tore through the vulnerable Hraxian ships. "Multiple detonations," the sensor officer reported. "The Hraxian fleet is. They're retreating. Proxima colony is safe." Cheers erupted throughout the command center, but Amanda noticed Hayes and Corell exchange a worried look. "What's wrong?" "They're not just retreating from Proxima," Hayes said, pointing to the strategic display. "Look at these movement patterns. All across the galaxy, Hraxian forces are pulling back toward the core systems." Corell's silver skin rippled with concern. "They're abandoning their empire too easily. This matches the data your teams found in the Star Render's archives. Something is drawing them back to the core." Amanda thought about the mysterious project hidden in the galactic core, the one that all those years of stolen resources had been funding. Whatever they're building out there, they think it's worth sacrificing their entire empire to protect it. Or to complete it, Hayes added grimly. A new message flashed across the screens. President Mitchell, calling from the emergency session of Earth's newly formed Interstellar Defense Council. "Dr. Stone," the president's voice was tight with concern. We've just received intelligence from deep space probes. The Hraxian forces aren't just retreating. They're converging. Whatever they've been building in the core, it's almost ready. Ambassador Corell stepped forward. Then we must strike now, while they are disorganized. Earth has led us this far. Will you lead us once more? Amanda looked around the room at the faces of a dozen species, all united by their newfound freedom and their determination to keep it. The real battle, she realized, was just beginning. We started this, she said finally. We'll help finish it. Whatever they're building in the core, they're about to learn that the galaxy isn't their private resource bank anymore. The Geneva spaceport had never been designed to host representatives from over 1,000 alien species. Yet here they were, filling the hastily constructed chamber with a riot of colors, shapes, and sizes. Some floated in anti-gravity fields, others required special atmospheric chambers, but all had come with a single purpose: to build something new from the ashes of the Hraxian Empire. Dr. Amanda Stone stood at the podium, still uncomfortable with her role as Earth's chief scientific representative. The last 3 weeks had been a blur of preparation, planning, and increasingly disturbing reports from the galactic core. The quantum shield breaking technology has been successfully shared with all member worlds, she reported, her voice carried by universal translators, to every being present. But the Hraxians have already begun adapting their systems. Our advantage won't last forever. President Mitchell, now serving as Earth's first interstellar ambassador, took the floor. Which is why we must act now. The coalition fleet is assembled, but we need a command structure, a united front. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices and translator chatter. Many species had longer histories of space travel than humanity, more advanced technology, larger populations, yet they all looked to Earth for leadership. Ambassador Corell of the Lyran Collective rose to speak. My people have sailed the stars for 10,000 years, yet we submitted to Hraxian demands without resistance. Earth, barely a spacefaring species, showed us that innovation and courage matter more than technical advancement. The massive form of General Zax Trull, Supreme Commander of the Regelian Defense Force, moved forward. His crystalline body caught the light as he spoke. The humans did what none of us could. They united their entire world against a common threat. Even the Hraxians noted this in their own records. They had never seen such. What was their term? Organized chaos, Colonel Hayes provided from his position near the door. They couldn't understand how a species could be so divided yet unite so completely when threatened. Dr. Stone watched as more representatives added their voices in support of Earth's leadership role. She caught Colonel Martinez's eye across the room, where he was coordinating with the intelligence teams. His slight nod told her it was time. There's something else you need to know, she said, her voice cutting through the discussion. Our analysis of the Star Renders databanks is complete. We know what the Hraxians are building in the core. The chamber fell silent as the main holographic display activated, showing a massive construction project hidden among the dense star clusters of the galactic core. The structure was unlike anything any species had seen before. They're building a quantum amplification array, Amanda explained, the images rotating to show the scale of the project. Using the resources they've stolen from all of us, they're creating a device capable of manipulating space-time itself. President Mitchell stepped forward. According to the data, once activated, this device could let them rewrite the very laws of physics within their sphere of influence. They could make their shields truly impenetrable, their weapons unstoppable. They could become gods. The chamber erupted again, but this time in fear rather than debate. Ambassador Corell's silver skin had turned almost white. How long until it's operational? 2 weeks, Colonel Martinez answered. Maybe less. That's why we need to finalize the coalition now. Today. President Mitchell surveyed the chamber, her voice strong and clear. Earth offers the following: our shield-breaking technology, our quantum research facilities, and our full military support. In return, we ask for your trust and your aid, not as subjects or subordinates, but as equals. The Hraxians built their empire on fear and division. Let's build something better on unity and hope. One by one, the representatives stood, floated, or otherwise signaled their agreement. The Galactic Defense Coalition was born not from a single species dominance, but from a shared determination to remain free. As the formal articles of coalition were being drafted, Amanda found herself looking at the stars through the chamber's massive windows. Somewhere out there, the Hraxians were racing to complete their superweapon. But this time, they wouldn't face a single world's resistance. They would face a united galaxy. 1 year after the formation of the Galactic Defense Coalition, Earth had become unrecognizable. Massive space elevators rose from every continent, their peaks disappearing into the upper atmosphere. The streets of major cities now bustled with beings from 1,000 worlds, all here to learn from the species that had changed the course of galactic history. Dr. Amanda Stone stood in her office at the New Geneva complex, looking out over the anti-gravity parks where human and alien children played together. The final battle for the galactic core had been fierce, but the Coalition's victory had been absolute. The Hraxian quantum array, nearly completed, had been dismantled. Its components were now being studied by a joint scientific team, its power redirected toward peaceful purposes. Still watching the kids, Colonel Hayes asked, entering her office with a datapad, or just avoiding the paperwork from the Regelian Defense Conference. She smiled, turning to face her old friend. A bit of both. Hard to believe it's only been a year since we were fighting for our survival. Speaking of which, Hayes handed her the datapad. The last Hraxian holdouts surrendered this morning. The tribunal can finally begin. The screen showed images of the massive courthouse that had been constructed in orbit, designed to accommodate representatives from every species the Hraxians had victimized. Justice would be served not through vengeance, but through a legal process that would show the galaxy had evolved beyond the Hraxians' brutal philosophy. Dr. Stone, her assistant's voice came through the intercom. The students from the Centaurian Science Academy are here for their lecture. Back to work, she said, straightening her coalition science director's uniform. The lecture hall was packed with beings of all species, each eager to learn about the quantum principles that had changed everything. Today's topic is simple, she began, looking out at the diverse crowd. We're going to discuss how unity and innovation can overcome any obstacle. A year ago, Earth was considered a primitive world by galactic standards. But we had something the Hraxians never understood: the ability to come together without losing what makes us unique. A holographic display showed the battle for the core, where the Coalition fleet had used modified versions of her shield-breaking technology to prevent the quantum array's activation. The students watched in awe as ships from 100 species moved in perfect coordination, each contributing their own strengths to the greater whole. After the lecture, Amanda made her way to the Coalition Council chamber for the afternoon session. The Sentinel Protocol, designed to prevent any species from achieving the kind of dominance the Hraxians had held, was working better than anyone had expected. Power was shared, resources were distributed fairly, and scientific knowledge was freely exchanged. President Mitchell, now the Coalition's first secretary, was addressing the council when Amanda arrived. The terraforming of previously uninhabitable worlds is proceeding ahead of schedule. Thanks to shared technology and resources, we're creating new homes for species displaced by Hraxian mining operations. As the session continued, Amanda's thoughts drifted to that first moment when the Hraxian ship had appeared over Earth, demanding tribute. Their arrogance had been their downfall. They had seen a primitive world and expected submission. Instead, they had found a species that refused to be categorized. that could be both divided and united, both innovative and traditional. The day ended with a sunset that painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, the light playing off the crystalline towers of New Geneva. In the distance, a group of children, human and alien alike, were learning to play baseball, of all things. The alien kids had taken to it with enthusiasm, though some had to be reminded not to use their natural flying abilities to catch the ball. Amanda smiled as she headed home. The stars above no longer represented a threat or a mystery, but a promise. Humanity had not only survived its trial by fire, but had helped forge something new and beautiful from the ashes of oppression. The Hraxians had demanded tribute, expecting Earth to either submit or perish. Instead, Earth had given the galaxy something far more valuable: hope.